Welcome to Reformgelical, everyone. We were just talking about houses. Status update. AD, you want to break the news?
Yeah, well, me and my wife did buy a house, so we're excited about that. It is in New Hampshire, though, which made Matt very sad.
It made me very sad. But he gave me reasons to hope, and I'm very post-mill about him moving to Florida.
Florida is a wonderful state. I agree.
It is. And I want to tell you a little bit about my housing situation right now. We really need windows really bad. Like in the summertime, wasps were coming through and eating through the sealants around. So I was killing wasps all day long.
I was about to say, why do you need windows in Florida? I mean, it's warm, it's nice, right?
Oh, the humidity sinks in, and then the windows are so bad that it gets all steamy in the morning because of the humidity. It's terrible. So we have 31 windows in our house.
Okay.
And the quote was for $28,000.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yes.
Honestly, I do know why you need windows in Florida. I stayed at a place. I was on a mission trip, and there was a guy who's there who was very wealthy, and he let us stay at his compound. But even if you're wealthy in El Salvador, you still have to go by the state's electric company, which is very unreliable. So one day at night, the power went out, and so it's super hot. There's bugs. It's like a jungle. Mm-hmm. And I had to open the window, but I didn't want to open the window because every time you open the window, bugs and mosquitoes and moisture just comes in.
It's a trade-off.
And then you close the window and it's like oppressive heat. So you have to choose your poison at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And honestly, we're also going to get a permanent generator because I cannot sleep without air conditioning in dry, humid.
I don't blame you.
So in humidity, I would die.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. It was the worst situation to have to trade off because either you get eaten alive by bugs or you sweat to death.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's terrible. Anyways, you should move here. I'm just kidding.
I do like Florida though, actually.
So I think that Christianity Today watches the show and they've been affected by our conspiracy theory talk.
You saw that?
I saw that. Oh my goodness. We'll get to that in a second. But first, I want to say, if you do not watch us live, you need to start doing that. One, you support us. And two, you get to be in on the conversations. You get to be part of the show. So you can watch us currently on Wednesday nights at 8:30. But I'm strongly considering moving it to Thursday nights. AD, how do you feel about that?
I like it.
You do like it. Okay.
I didn't know how strong you were. I knew you were considering it, but I didn't know how strong. But if you are, that's a good thing for me.
That is a good thing for you. Okay, yeah. I think we should do it next week, 8:30 Thursday. And I'm strongly considering it because I was thinking about it today. Why do we record at 8:30 at night Eastern time? It's super late, and it's so that we can have viewers come join us on the West Coast. And then we have a bunch of people saying they want us to move to Thursday to join us, and I'm like, no, we're not doing it. I'm just shooting myself in the foot.
I agree.
So there we go. Now and forever, confessional, Reformgelical Confession 1 moving to Thursday nights.
Yes.
8:30 next week.
I like it. I really like it. And the best part is you wake up in the morning and it's Friday. And everyone loves a Friday.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That just means that I'm going to have to really stay up late, though, and make sure it comes out for the public. But that's okay. I will do that for our listeners because I love you guys that much. Follow us on all the social media sites, Reformgelical. Follow us on YouTube. Follow AD Robles' private channel as well, or his own channel. I shouldn't say private channel. It's for the public. And my channel, How to Build a Tent. And consider helping support us on Patreon, patreon.com/reformgelical. And
much appreciated.
Much appreciated. And that's pretty much all the business we have. But so I want to talk about this little article that Christianity Today was talking about. And they weren't really flattering. I thought from the heading of it, Jesus cares about your conspiracy theory. And I thought, they are reassuring us that we are on the right track, that we should be following conspiracy theories. But no, they were making fun of us. And it made me sad.
Listen, I was with you. I believe you said this. Maybe it wasn't you. So if it wasn't you, I'm sorry. I'm going to heap a lot of scorn on you from the public. But I didn't know Christianity Today existed anymore.
Really?
I had heard of it from when I was a kid, but I didn't know before that whole article about anti-Trump stuff.
Well, they're a really wide, well-known magazine in liberal effeminate circles. So I totally will give you a pass.
Cool. I'm just too busy doing manly stuff, like I'm just too
wood.
busy chopping wood, strangling bears and stuff. Like that's what I'm busy doing. I'm not reading Christianity Today.
I could see you having a bear in a chokehold in one hand and a white seltzer in the other one.
Oh, White Claw, yeah.
White Claw.
Mango flavor. I love that mango. It's good.
Bingo. But the thing that hurt me the most about the conspiracy theory is not that the super liberal bent article about it, but they really think Epstein killed himself. And you just lost credibility with me on that one.
I agree. Well, what I found so interesting about this is it's very easy to hate on conspiracy theories because, at the end of the day, like, a lot of the conspiracy theories, they end up, it goes beyond just doubting the official story. Because that's with the Epstein stuff, everyone immediately doubted the official story because it's not believable.
Mm-hmm.
He killed himself somehow magically, and magically the video of it is gone, and magically there was nobody there to guard him. Like that's unbelievable on the face. Like if you're a reasonable person, you're like, yeah, that's really hard to believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a conspiracy theory to doubt something, but it is a conspiracy theory to like attach motives to it and to say, okay, clearly Epstein didn't kill himself. And I know that the Israelites did it. The Israelis did it. It was the Israelis did it. The Jews. It was the Jews that did it. Obviously, like that's a conspiracy theory. You don't really have most normal people. I mean, I'm not saying nobody doesn't have evidence of things that caused Epstein to die, but most normal people don't. Mm-hmm. And so when you that's the theory part. But this article it makes you feel bad if you even doubt the story. And that's not a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, it just came out like this last week. They even destroyed the tapes from his first attempted suicide and things like that. Like,
sure.
Come on.
Sure they did. And that's the ridiculousness of it. Because again, like, it's one thing to say, I don't believe you that story. It's unbelievable. I don't know what happened, but it's awfully convenient that this guy who's very politically connected all of a sudden kills himself, and all of a sudden there's no evidence. Mm-hmm. That's not a conspiracy theory. And this article is blurring the lines. This is a classic way to sort of like disparage anyone who doesn't believe the official narrative. Christianity Today is part of the media machine. It's just that simple.
Or they're trying to be.
At least, yes. That's a very good point, though, Matt. Because you're right. Like, they're not, but they really desperately want to be.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason to believe the Epstein story, the official Epstein story. There's no reason for a reasonable person to do it, except that you just say, well, you got to trust somebody. You know what I mean?
Right.
And what I love about this article, if you guys go to it, it's called Jesus Cares About Your Conspiracy Theory. The picture is fantastic. It's got the Loch Ness Monster picture, the very famous picture that looks like a hand like this. It's got a Bigfoot picture that I've never seen before. It's got the famous like top hat flying saucer picture, and then it also has the picture of the footprint on the moon. And so it's basically just trying to get you to believe the most insane stuff is the same as this Epstein doubt, and it's not at all.
Yeah. And then also they like have to throw in a dig at Trump too, which really cracks me up, because that one unveiling article when they're like, we're finally going to take a stand and be unbiased. It's like it's bleeding through every single one of your articles. Get out of here, Christianity Today.
Every one of them. And I'm not joking. Look, well, okay, let me walk that back for a second. I was kind of joking that I didn't know Christianity Today existed, but I've never read an article. And so when I heard that in that one article about anti-Trump stuff, it was like, we're trying to be above the fray. I was like, yeah, I don't believe that. That's hard to believe.
Yeah.
Of course it's dripping in this article.
Right. I'm like, I'm old enough to remember your tweets from yesterday, Christianity Today. Like, come on. I've been following you for years. You're not fooling anybody.
Yeah, and but this article is not all wrong either. Like, there are real conspiracy theories, and they mention some of this. It's like when you believe things about people and you have no evidence of it, and it's just all about, just assuming evil motives and stuff like that. Well, yeah, that might be a conspiracy theory, but what I want to really avoid is going from that to anyone who doubts X is a conspiracy theorist. That's not the case. Yeah. It's not the case at all. It's when you make proclamations about people that you have no idea are true. It's just convenient. And so one of the examples here is with Epstein. They're like, well, clearly Hillary Clinton killed him because she has something to gain from it. And yeah, she does have something to gain from that. But if I don't have any evidence of it, I'm not going to say that. That is a conspiracy theory. Mm-hmm. However, it's not a lie to say that Bill Clinton was involved with Epstein and he has something to gain from his death. That's not a conspiracy. That's a fact, obviously.
Yeah, it's in the manifest.
It's in the manifest. Right. This is a stone cold fact. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to say that Bill Clinton had him whacked, but I'm going to say that very clearly somebody had him whacked.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I think that's a great way to frame it and to make a distinction of like, yeah, we can question things. We should question things. We shouldn't just take things at face value, but then we should be careful not to assign motives and even to a point of slander or bearing false witness to people just because it's convenient or it fits. If we don't know, we shouldn't be assigning blame in any situation. It is very convenient that people around Clinton just die, but it doesn't mean that they killed them in this situation.
Right. Well, definitely super convenient. And personally, I think it's enough. And I might get some flack for this, but I think it's enough to not ever even consider voting for them for anything. And it's like, well, if everyone around you dies, all of a sudden you tell me that you're pro-life. I don't think so. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. I might be wrong about that, but it's not. I'm not saying that you killed anyone, but I'm just saying I just don't trust you, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And in fact, there's most people I don't trust in politics.
There's nothing wrong with that either.
So I totally thought that Christianity Today, and here's my conspiracy theory, they watched the show because they brought this up. And I mean, who else in Christianity talks about conspiracy theories like we do? I mean, it is consistent. But then it was confirmed.
That's right.
It's right. It is. I'm telling you. And it was confirmed because that fourth picture of the moon landing, that is specific to us.
Listen, they mentioned in the article, this is another kind of just a little piece of evidence that they really want to be mainstream. They want to so bad. They talk about something anti-Russia, and they say that most Russian citizens don't believe America ever went to the moon. It's like, oh, those stupid backwards Russians. I mean, they're just drinking vodka all day and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, okay, so let's just take a step back for a second. Is it a conspiracy theory to not believe something? I don't think so. I don't believe in evolution. That's not a conspiracy theory, but it would be a conspiracy theory if I said, not only do I not believe in evolution, but I also think it was the Koch brothers that invented evolution, and they did it so that we would all just be slaves to the government. And they also want us to believe all this stuff because of X, Y, Z. And I have no evidence of it. Uh-huh. I don't believe it's not a conspiracy. Listen, it is not a conspiracy theory to doubt something. You might be stupid for doubting something. I'm not saying that. That's, if you think Russians are stupid for not believing the moon landing, fine. I think Russians are stupid all day long. I don't care. But it's not a conspiracy theory. They just doubt it.
And let's turn that shoe on the other foot, or put that shoe on the other foot. Like, how many things does the Russian government claim is true that we don't believe them for?
Exactly.
All day long. In fact, there's an HBO series called Chernobyl based on not believing what the Russians claim is true.
Right. And that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So just today, I think I read an article that basically the entire Russian government resigned in one day. And basically
power grab. Oh my
right. A power grab. Right. So the result is that, Putin has a lot more power. That seems very logical. But what I don't want to do is I want to theorize all these kinds of things. Well, it was probably all along Trump wanted them to do that. So now it's all Trump. You know what I mean? Like, that is a conspiracy theory. But to report the facts and to doubt that they all did that, like, it's not that far-fetched to say, you know what? I doubt that every person in the Russian government resigned in the same day randomly. I highly doubt that.
It's just they woke up all in the same. It was all that radiation from the latest nuclear reactor leaking.
And yes, Putin obviously benefits, but let's just make sure that we understand the difference between a theory and just doubt. Doubt can be a good thing. It's not always a good thing, but it can be a good thing. And when someone tells you something unbelievable, it's actually good to not believe them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And wise. It's not only good, but it's wise.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I want to put forth a conspiracy theory because we do every show. We just talked about it. We actually need a conspiracy theory. I think Christianity Today is trying to become the new Christian Science Monitor, that new publication. And I think that's what they're trying to do with all these hate, anti-Trump stuff.
It's very possible, and I'm glad that you introduced that as a theory. It is a theory. You have no idea if that's true or not.
I don't know anyone there.
Right, and I've got theories too. I want to hear one of mine.
Of course, I do.
Okay, here's a theory. Totally a theory, just opinion based on nothing except my own observations. I think that Gospel Coalition, ERLC, entities like that would love and are trying to be like the Christian Snopes. So they're like the gatekeepers. So like, if you want to know what's real, just go to the Gospel Coalition and we'll tell you what's up. And it's like the Snopes version. And I think that's what's going on. Now, do I know that's true? No, it's just a theory. That is a literal conspiracy theory. That would be a conspiracy. It's just a theory. I don't want anyone to believe it. I just think from what I've seen, that makes a lot of sense.
That does. And it's consistent with just Christian business in general. If you look at Christian music, they're always trying to be like some secular, something, right? A secular band. We're going to be just like Pearl Jam or whatever it is.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever been accused of being a secular version of something or a Christian version of something? Because I've been accused of being the Christian version of like Ben Shapiro or something.
Oh, really? No, I have not.
I have. Have you? No?
No, I have not.
Yeah, that's interesting. No. That's probably coming.
I've been accused of being the Christian Dave Ramsey. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I love Dave Ramsey.
I disavow. That's pretty good. That was a good one, Matt.
Thanks.
I like Dave. For the record, I like Dave Ramsey too.
I love him too. I think he's great. And I think my show is actually a great addition to his. You get out of debt and then you start companies.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, well, that's actually, I'm glad you said that because I don't want to get in trouble.
Do it.
I know a lot of people like Dave Ramsey.
Let's get ratings.
I do too. I think he's really good about the getting out of debt stuff. Like, it's awesome. I think his investment and in building and stuff, it's okay. It's not the greatest, but it's okay. But the debt stuff, second to none.
Yeah. Yeah, and what is it great about it is not that obvious like life lesson that debt sucks. It's that he makes it a tangible thing that you can hold on to. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's bite-sized chunks. Like I always tell my wife when we're in a discussion where we're not agreeing, it's like we got to take this into bite-sized chunks, and he's really good at that. Because if you're in debt, like serious debt, and you're like, man, I got to get out of this $40,000 worth of debt, like that seems insurmountable. But he's very good at like saying, oh, it's not. All you got to do is break it down. And it's really good at that kind of thing.
It's so good at that thing. All right. Yeah. So let's spin the agenda wheel to the next topic. And you brought up the ERLC. So let's talk about that wonderful video about diversity.
Yeah.
Now, I have to admit, I sent it out to you thinking I want to talk about this and what the ERLC, I can spell, was doing was just one line, and I wanted to talk about it, and I still do. But then I went back and actually was starting to study it and research this 2-minute clip, and I would show it, but apparently we can't do sound here. But there's so many things in 2 minutes that just have red flags flying through my mind on this thing.
So it's called, just for anyone who's listening to this, it's called How Should the Diversity of the Kingdom Motivate Us to Pursue a Diverse Church? And it's by Micah Edmondson. Micah Edmondson, I happen to know a little bit about this guy.
Oh, please give us some background then, because I don't know anything about him.
Very little. He's an Orthodox Presbyterian minister. He's a pastor. And the Orthodox Presbyterian Church is a conservative branch of the Presbyterian Church.
Okay.
And so in fact, I'm moving to Keene, New Hampshire. My plan is to go to an Orthodox Presbyterian church in New Hampshire as well. So
Wow.
it's a good church. He's a minister in a good church. I'll say that about Micah.
We should try to get him on. Maybe we'll do that.
He might know me and he might not want to, but I think we should try.
There's a lot of people that are treating you like Ben Shapiro and just don't want anything to do with you. I'm noticing that even on Twitter.
They think, because I have a little too much fun, I think, sometimes.
I know. Liberal cannot have fun, especially Christian liberals. Like, that is the 1 + 1 = no fun.
Yes,
I'm telling you. Oh my gosh, that one professor on Twitter, she's like, I don't even remember why I muted him, but I'm gonna block him just because you said so.
Yeah, Karen Swallow Pryor, yeah.
Oh, you saw that. Oh.
I'll say this: like every liberal who's ever talked to me in real life on the internet or even in real life, they always say, "Oh wow, you're a nice guy. This went really well."
Yeah,
I'm like, I am a nice guy. I have strong opinions, but I don't hate people.
He has Winsome November. How can you not like him?
I'm totally winsome.
Yeah, you totally are. I'm totally off track here. Okay, so you have
Micah
this
Edmonton, yes.
Micah in Edmonton, Presbyterian Orthodox Church, conservative. We like the denomination, and we probably like Micah, but I
like Micah.
And like honestly, his foundations, his premises that he had, I was agreeing with.
Me too.
But his conclusions are starting to like kind of concern me, and I wanted to go through them. So one of the things he says is the kingdom of God has always been a multicultural kingdom.
Yes.
And well, okay, I think so. If you want to start at Abraham, I guess, and his kids, because he had the half Egyptian Ishmael, half whatever you want to call Babylonian,
right?
Abraham, and then he had the full Abrahamian or Babylonian, Isaac. But then he says, therefore, we should pursue multicultural diversity. Right. And I should just premise this, because I know we're going to have the people that are like, oh, you hate diversity, you hate racist, you're a racist and all this stuff.
Yes.
I'm not against that at all, but I'm just wondering, like, okay, so this statement, we should pursue multicultural diversity. Is that any of our business? Like, I understand it from a business perspective,
yes,
where I want to have diverse opinions, diverse thought. I'm not even talking about racial. I don't care about racial, but just like I want different backgrounds. I want different, that kind of stuff. But from a Christian,
canceled. You're canceled.
Canceled. I'm done. I don't care if we have a lesbian on the team or not. If they think the same way as somebody else, then it's not a diverse team. But from a church perspective, if we truly believe that it's the Holy Spirit converting people, like, what does that underlying belief mean that you can say a statement like we should pursue multicultural diversity, AD?
So okay, this is I've talked to my biological brother about this many times, because he's a Presbyterian as well. He's in the PCA, so he's not in the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, but he's in the Presbyterian Church in America, also a conservative-ish denomination. And he talks to his fellow Presbyterian elders about this all the time. And so let me just say a couple things to backtrack. So number one, he says it's always been a multi-ethnic church. Technically not accurate, but I don't want to beat him up too much about it, because it really has for a very long time. So almost from the beginning, it's been multicultural. I mean, if you go all the way to the beginning, you've just got Adam and you've got his sons. So clearly it wasn't. It's just Adam and his sons.
Right.
But I don't want to beat him up too much about it, because in general, he's right. I would want to agree with that. The church has been multi-ethnic for a very long time.
And we are now.
And we are, and undisputable that we are now.
Right.
So when people say we need to pursue the multi-ethnic church, you can rightly say we don't need to pursue it. We just have to accept it because it's already here.
Yes.
Okay. So that's number one. I completely agree with you, Matt. And this is, I've talked to my brother Matt about this so many times. It's like, how do you get from acknowledging that the church is already multi-ethnic. 2, we must have multi-ethnic local bodies as well, because that's really what he's talking about. He's not saying that we must have a multi-ethnic church in general, because he admits we already have that. What he's saying is we need to have local churches that express that same multi-ethnicity. And it's just assumed. There's nothing in this video that says why, and which I find so amazing, because the title of the video is how should the diversity of the kingdom motivate us to pursue a diverse church? And he never explains that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
How should it motivate us? That's never answered in this video. All he says is that it should. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't. I'm just saying that you haven't given me a reason why it should. Because I know many people have reached out to me over the couple of years that I've been on YouTube, and they say, look, I live in this mono-ethnic place. I mean, yeah, we have a few blacks, we have a few Puerto Ricans, but we're a white town. And so, like, am I doing something wrong? What should I be doing to get more multi-ethnicities to my church? And my answer is always nothing. Like, the Holy Spirit is the one who converts. The Holy Spirit is the one who builds his church. God builds his church. And however he builds it, it's fine. What you should do is just make sure that you're not being partial. You're not doing anything that's driving people away necessarily. But it's the Holy Spirit's job. And so people say, oh, why are you against? I'm not against the multi-ethnic church. What I am against is the human engineered multi-ethnic church, where we are engineering it, not God. Because I lived in Brooklyn for a long time, and my neighborhood, I didn't go to a church in my neighborhood, but if I did, it would have been probably a very Middle Eastern church, a little bit Italian. There'd be very few Puerto Ricans, because there wasn't a lot of Puerto Ricans in my neighborhood. Because in the city, there's ethnic lines. It's just how it is. Would my church have been doing anything wrong if we didn't have 11% Puerto Ricans, because there's 11% Puerto Ricans in the United States? According to some, maybe, but I just can't see how biblically.
Right. Yeah. And like I've said before, we've kind of talked about this, where like I want a multicultural church.
Yeah.
I love going to a church where it's not just, people from my background, because there is advantages, I think, from cultural diversity. And when I say cultural, I do not mean racial.
Yep.
Like, there's thousands of cultures, and it has nothing to do with race most of the time. It has to do with your families, where you live, and all of these different things.
That's right.
Like, a black person in Africa has a different culture than an American black person. A white person in America has a different culture than Europe or South Africa.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and let me say something else too. I mean, I'm a Puerto Rican, and I know a little bit about these. I know a little bit about being Puerto Rican, and I've always known that there is some kind of a rift between Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. And if I'm not in these circles enough to be able to tell the difference between a Puerto Rican and a Dominican many times, if you showed me a person and you said, is this woman Puerto Rican or Dominican? I probably would get it wrong. I don't know.
We'll just have them wrap a cigar, and then you'll figure it out.
There's actually a few words that I could ask them to pronounce, and I'd get it. But if it was just based on looks, I'd be like, it'd be 50-50. But if there's someone that's really entrenched in these cultures, they'd probably be able to tell very quick, and they'd probably be able to tell just based on looks. And the reality is, like there are cultural differences that go beyond this most basic ooga booga caveman style division of how you look,
right? Skin
color. That's the most stupid division ever.
Yeah, it is. It's as stupid as saying, "Oh, you have blue eyes, you think just like me, and you have the same opinions." Right? Right. It's seriously the same distinction. It's nothing.
But anyway, no. But you're so right. I think there are advantages to cultural divisions. Listen. I'm not going to say that there's only advantages. I think there's negatives too, and I think that there's advantages to mono-ethnicities as well, and there's also negatives.
Yeah. I mean, in business school, we talk about it all the time, where you have one of the biggest negatives of multicultural or a diverse team or whatever, is because there's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of misunderstanding. You have to
Yep.
spend a lot more time on communication because you
Yep.
perceive communication differently.
Right.
A whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, there are negatives to it too. It's
Right.
not just always a good.
I've read articles. Let me just say
Yeah.
this, and I'll let you go for as long as you want. So one time I read an article that was canceled almost instantly, and the article was basically saying that like children that have features of different ethnicities, like let's just say they're like half European, half African, and they look different than Europeans and Africans. They look like a combination, obviously, and that's how God made people. So yeah, lots of people would say, "Oh, that looks so beautiful," and that's probably true. I would say that. I mean, listen, I hope so because my kids are different ethnicities, and so anyway, I would agree with that. But the kids themselves, when you poll them, they say, "Man, I really wish I had an ethnic identity. I don't. I kind of look like white, but kind of black, but not really." And they feel kind of sad that they don't have like a tribe that they can really. And so I'm not saying anything about whether that's good or bad. All I'm saying is that there are trade-offs. It's not just automatically good to have a multi-ethnic child. There could be good things about it, but it's not just everything's peaches and cream and sunshine and rainbows. It's not like that. There's pluses and minuses, and that's the reality. So all that to say is the standard accepted narrative is not necessarily true about this.
Yeah, definitely. So before we go back to what this video, I want to ask this though. This is this interesting question for me. Why are the Dominicans known for wrapping cigars, but the Puerto Ricans aren't? What happened there?
I don't know.
You don't know? Oh.
Listen, I don't know. But all I do know is that the maybe I shouldn't say. No, never mind.
Come on.
Listen, nope, I'm not doing it. I'll say this. When I was young, it was very clear to me that I was supposed to avoid Dominican women.
I won't ask you by who. All right, coming right back.
I have no problem telling you, grandparents, man, they get a pass for being, racist or whatever you want to call it. I was told. Listen, I'll say this. I was told that Dominican women are very violent. That's what I was told.
That's funny. My wife's great grandma, 92, Panamanian, and she says things that make it very clear that she's 92. Not from America.
Exactly. That's how it is, man.
I'm glad you don't know how to work Facebook, Grandma.
And when you're 92, your kids are going to be like, oh, Grandpa Matt, come on.
No, Bill Burr has a great joke about it. It's just like, you just live too long. We weren't made to live this long. We outlive our cultures.
Exactly.
We outlive our times. But okay, so seriously, going back to this though, and I think it goes
for
back
the record, I love Dominicans,
and I love their cigars.
Who doesn't?
Oh man, phenomenal! I recently bought from Costco a variety pack of Dominicans. They were all phenomenal. But okay, so going back to this, and this goes back to just this idea that not all ideas are heresy, they might be bad, and if you took them to a logical conclusion, they'd be heretical.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of those cases too, where I'm not saying this guy is heretical or even what he said was, because I don't think he was, but just these ideas of therefore we should pursue multicultural diversity and what those logical conclusions could lead to.
Yes.
I would just want to bring it up and make it aware to him, to anyone else who thinks this way, because it's not good.
Right.
It's not good. It's not healthy. And you're taking credit away from God and what he's doing by doing this. Yeah.
So there's a few angles that I approach this and figure out if it's makes any sense. One thing is, the idea is that you should have a multi-ethnic church. So how far do you take that? So yes, there's a multi-ethnic church, capital C church. He calls it the Catholic Church, essentially is what he calls it. And what that means is the universal church. So everyone in the church, that's what he thinks is multi-ethnic. And I agree, that is very multi-ethnic. The Catholic Church, small c, is multi-ethnic. And so therefore we should pursue a multi-ethnic local church. Okay, great. But let's think about this. So how do I know it's multi-ethnic enough?
Yeah.
One way is to say, well, the proportions should be proportional. A lot of people say that if you, whatever your proportions are in your city, your town, whatever, it should be proportional. And I say, well, why stop there? Why shouldn't it be proportional to the entire earth? So as long as you don't have the exact proportions of the entire earth, you're not a multi-ethnic church. Well, he would say that's ridiculous. Well, I say, why?
Mm-hmm.
Show me in the Bible why we should even be doing this at all.
Right.
And if you can't, then why shouldn't we doing it the way I say we should do it? You can't. It just doesn't make sense. The other thing is, if we should be, so here's another way to look at it. If we should be doing this in our church, having a multi-ethnic local church because the kingdom is multi-ethnic, well, why shouldn't we do it in our marriages? So why wouldn't you insist on a multi-ethnic marriage? Because if we're trying to reflect the kingdom of God, why wouldn't we do it in our smallest kingdom, which is our household? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, okay, shouldn't we have a multi-ethnic household?
Yeah, that's a good point.
He probably wouldn't say that we need to. He would say that's probably, he would probably say it's acceptable to do that. It's very good to do that. Okay, so then if it's good to do it, why wouldn't you pursue what's good? Why wouldn't you try to reflect the kingdom of God in your marriage? Now, I have a multi-ethnic marriage. My wife is European.
You liberal.
I happen to know that Micah's wife is not European. So what gives there? Like what? Yeah. Why not there? Why wouldn't?
Yeah, why didn't you diversify?
Yeah, in your smallest kingdom, the one that you have the most control over, why wouldn't you diversify there? And if you don't have to, okay, great. I agree. You don't have to. In fact, I think there's many advantages to not diversifying there. Now, I'm not a kinist, so before anyone freaks out, I'm not a kinist. I'm just saying that there are pluses and minuses to all this stuff.
I don't know what a kinist is to freak out.
A kinist is a person who thinks that you should only marry within your own kind, so to speak.
Oh, so you're a racist.
So I'd be okay. I'm in present, according to a kinist, I'm in present sin because I'm not married to another Puerto Rican.
So it's a Christian thing.
Yes, definitely.
Oh.
Yeah. So what they do is they I don't know every nuance of this, but from what I understand, the basics are they take the passages that talk about not intermarrying within faith. So you can't marry a pagan, you can't marry a Muslim, you can't marry a Jew, like that kind of thing. And they say that that's really a cultural thing more than anything. So you can't marry someone outside of your ethnicity.
Wow. Okay.
Because in the Old Testament, you couldn't marry a non-Jew. That's true.
Yeah, but they could become Jewish.
But right. So
and the blocks come falling down.
Matt, enough of that logic.
Yeah, we don't have room for that in 2020.
Yeah. Well, but this is the thing. And listen, I'm not. And here's something else I won't say. A lot of people would say, well, they're definitely not Christians that believe that. Well, yeah, there's probably some that they just have these. But I think there's a lot of people that would believe that kind of thing that probably are Christians. They're just ignorant. But that's just, I'm not that way. I'm just saying that there are potentially advantages to not marrying someone that has a completely different culture than you.
Yeah.
There's probably challenges there.
There probably is with in-laws.
Definitely within, and that's something to consider.
Yeah. When you were talking about there's probably some people that don't know any better, I immediately thought of this white lady. I forgot where it was, like Louisiana or something, or maybe Alabama, where she was a Christian. She refused service for flowers. I think she's a florist to a biracial couple that was getting married. Yeah. And she said, no, I won't do that because God doesn't approve of it. And she made the news, but she went back and talked to her pastor about it. Her pastor said, no, that's not biblical. And she apologized. I'm like, there you go. There's,
and that woman would be canceled so fast and like basically called Hitler and stuff like that. And she's not Hitler. She just didn't, she just, that's what she was taught. And she read something that sounded like that in the Bible, and she believed it because she just wants to believe God. And as soon as somebody's like, that's actually not really what it says, let me show you, instantly repented. Oh, yeah. Okay, I want to do what God says.
Mm-hmm. And what's sad about go ahead. I was just going to say what's sad about that is she's looked at like the worst person in the world.
Exactly.
But isn't that every single one of us and what sanctification is all about?
That's right.
And yet this person is demonized not because of Christian standards, but because of the world standards, even by Christians.
That's exactly right. I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on where people just get canceled and they get demonized, and maybe even it's for something that they do wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you're not automatically Hitler if you say something like that woman.
Yeah.
You're just not. If that's not how it is. I mean, and I think honestly, if a lot of us are honest, I don't want to disparage my grandparents because my grandparents are great. But like, if you talk to your grandparents about stuff that is like so obvious to you right now, they're not going to necessarily agree. And you know that your grandparents love the Lord. A lot of you guys have grandparents that love the Lord, and you know they do. But they've got problematic beliefs. Let me say that. And man, I if my grandparents ever hear this, it's okay because I'm not saying anything bad about them. But like, let's just take a step back. Look, we're not standing in judgment over our grandparents. The Lord is. They have to answer to Him, and they've got the same Lord that has grace on them, that has grace on you. And you need to consider that in about 20, 30 years when your beliefs are as backwards as their beliefs are. And I'm not saying there's not objective truth. Of course, there's objective truth, but we've got some things wrong. We have to admit that. Anyway, I don't know.
Especially if you're post-mill, right? This totally makes sense because
absolutely.
if the cultures are becoming more and more, kingdom-ish or whatever you guys call it, then that should happen, right? That's a sign it's happening.
Absolutely.
Gosh, here I go making arguments for your side. Ugh.
Well, I was telling my wife about how you wanted us to move to Florida, and she was saying, I forget what she was saying, but and I mentioned that, he's evangelical. He's pretty much reformed. And she's like, wait, he's converted to reform? I'm like, yeah, pretty much.
I still don't have a clear definition of what reformed is to know if I am or not.
Yeah, I need another year or
Except
so.
like, you just need to know a lot about church history and quote some people that you can't pronounce their names.
That's right.
I'm not there yet.
We'll be there soon.
I'll be there soon.
That's fun. That's a funny definition. All you need to do is know a little bit about church history and quote some people's names that you can't pronounce. That's basically it.
Okay, speaking of quoting people, I want to go to a little tweet that you had because I think there's some common ground here between you and me.
Let's do it.
And you are, I don't know what this thread is about. It might be Federal Vision. I'm not sure. But you're retweeting a guy named Stephen Wedgeworth.
Yes.
And you said something that I completely agree with. This is important. Okay, so I should try to read it. I'll read his tweet first. These are not in strict opposition, but the former is... crap. I realize this is not going to make sense to anybody who's not reading the article. But anyways, to the effect of... You're talking about baptism, infant baptism. Can you just... Okay, please.
Let me
save me, please.
I'll tell you. So... Stephen Wedgeworth was tweeting about covenant children, and what I would say about my children, they're all baptized, all three of them. One of them is a little bit over a year old. So if you asked him to articulate the gospel to you, he would probably slap you and say some babble. You know what I mean? He can't speak, but he's
my unbaptized son does the same.
Right. Exactly. So he's baptized. And so I would consider him a Christian, and I would consider him in the covenant. The new covenant. So Stephen Wedgeworth is saying that, different things about covenant children and like what their status is. You know what I mean? He's talking, God has promises for your covenant children, this and that. Anyway, so Brandon Adams, who we had on this show, wanted a clarification because he's a Baptist, probably similar to you. And he's like, so what is this promise? Like, is it conditional? Is it unconditional? Like, God says he has promises for your children, but he may or may not fulfill the promises. Like, what's going on? Because we all know that some kids who are baptized, they end up not believing, right?
Right.
And so what do you say about them? So it was not really a real promise. And so that's where we get to the tweet that you saw, where basically it says, so Brandon says, is it this or is it this? So the first one is, I will be a God to you if you believe, and I will be a God to your children if they believe. Or is it, I will be a God to you and your children if they're elect? So Brandon's trying to make a dichotomy here. So which one is it? Is it a real promise or not? Is it essentially what he's saying?
Okay.
And Stephen Wedgeworth said these two are not in strict opposition, but the former is better and more in line with what I believe. The latter is more of hyper Calvinism. So basically, what Stephen is saying is they're not in opposition necessarily, but it's more close to I will be a God to you if you believe, and your children if they believe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
So
And you believe that too, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
I do believe that.
And just for clarification for us, loosey-goosey evangelicals, hyper-Calvinism is pretty close to just fatalism, right? That you can't make any decisions on your own.
Yeah, essentially. So basically, it's like when God says something, when God makes a promise. So this is what, let's just bring it back into this tweet. So what Steve is saying is that it's closer to hyper-Calvinism when they say, I'll be a God to you and your children, but only if they're elect. And it's like, it puts you in this position where it's like, you're always guessing, am I elect? Am I not elect? Are my children elect? Are they not elect? Like, and it's very, very fatalistic. It's just very like you cut and dry. It might be technically true, but it's not really like that in our everyday interactions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So now I want to get to your tweet because this is bridge building. This isn't, just talking about Twitter, although we do that in conspiracy theories, probably every episode. You said, this is important. Of course, it's by faith, but I fully believe that God works through ordinary means. I believe that I'll teach my kids the way they should go, ordinary stuff, in a parenthetical, and then ellipses plus one period. And I believe that they'll go that way.
Yes.
And I feel like I can 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
As a Baptist.
I'm glad.
I believe that I have ordinary things to do to be a faithful father, to disciple my children, and that's not enough. I need God to move in my kid's life.
Yes.
And I'm believing in faith that if I'm doing that, the promises of train up a child in the way he should go and he won't depart from them and all of those things, that God will work in their lives.
Amen. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad that you do. And the thing is, like, I hope you understand that, like, most Baptists believe that too, but a lot of Baptists like to say, but my kids are like these pagans and like they're not Christians, and like, I just have to like hope that eventually one day they won't be pagans. And that, like, that's kind of contradictory to what you just said, but okay. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I'm seriously just talking this out. I don't have a big point to be made because I was reading that and I'm like, man, AD, I agree with that 100%. I'm in my prayer life praying and begging God to work in my son's life. Like every time I discipline my son, I don't just leave it at discipline, but I'm praying for God to forgive him of his sins and to fill him with his spirit and to work in his life and to shape him to be a man. Like, I understand that it's not my spankings that's going to save my child.
Right.
But it's true. Like, they can fall away. And just like I think you believe, your baptized child could be out of covenant, right?
But you see, and this is the point of what I said. So those spankings and those lessons and the hugs and what you tell your child about God, all of that is a grace from God, and it's not like a wasted grace. It's not like just an arbitrary grace. Like maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. I don't know. But like, there's a very big difference between a kid that grows up with you because you're following God's commands for your child, and a kid that grows up with a lesbian mother who doesn't care a lick about God and wants her son to find his own sexual way. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a very big difference between your son and that son, and that's heart-wrenching. We feel bad for that son, but we understand that the fact that God put that son, your son, in your family with you as his father is a tremendous grace for that kid. It's an ordinary means of grace. And that like we have to say, I think personally, that's not arbitrary. It's not like, well, maybe the lesbian son will be saved and maybe he won't, and maybe your son will be saved, maybe he won't. They have the same chance. I don't think that's how it works at all.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So it's not chance.
No.
Right?
No.
And even not an extreme like lesbian, but let's just say a father that is there and by worldly standards is good, but is like, hey, showing it the porn collection at 13 or telling him to go have sex or whatever.
Yep.
That is completely different
Yes.
to a faithful father teaching your son the commands of the Lord and stuff like that.
Absolutely, it's different.
And I love how David says it. It's not enough to teach them to obey the law, but you have to teach them how to love the law.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I'm going to say something that's going to probably trigger people. It's okay. But it's not exactly like this, but there's some similarities here, because I believe that this is God's universe, and everything in this universe tells us about God, and God is present in everything, and God's everywhere. I teach my son that. I ask him, where's God? He says, God's everywhere. He's everywhere. And everything that we experience, everything that we see, it just testifies to the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so when I tell my son about God, it's not like he may or may not exist. No, it's that's God who did this. So let me just scale this back for a second. So when I teach my son that color in the sky, that's blue, I don't teach that to him with the assumption that he may or may not believe that that's blue. I just teach it to him as if it's obviously blue, that's blue. And you're going to learn that that's blue, and you're going to always know that that's blue. And so when I teach my son about the Lord, I teach him with as much as I can muster, because it's difficult to do this with as much faith as I have. But I teach him that the Lord is there, and he's there, and you're going to learn that he's there, and everything that you experience is going to tell you that he's there. And there's no way that you're not going to think he's there. Like, I just assume that he's going to grow up in that, steeped in that. And I trust that God is going to keep him there. And I understand that people rebel, but I believe that God is not going to let him stray from that way. That's my faith. I'm going to teach him what to do. I'm going to teach him what's what in this world, and he's going to stay with that. And I don't think it's out of line to just say to God, like, I'm doing what you've told me to do, and I trust that you're going to, keep him here. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't teach my son in a way that's like, well, it's up to you. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's not up to you. It's not up to you whether the sky is blue or not. It just is blue. It's up to you to like accept reality or not, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. And I just have to say this. It's like there is a clear difference in your voice and just how you talk about this. You can tell that you are so passionate about this. And I absolutely love that. That's great. Yeah. But so this is what I'm seeing and I'm hearing. It's like, it's about how you view your children and their relationship to God. That is the issue, right? It's not that your kid is this heathen that is no better off than the lesbian couple or the secular father that has a porn addiction and all this stuff. But there is tangible blessings that are attributed to a family of faith.
Yeah, that's right. And you need to, and the hardest part about this, I think a lot of the time, is to accept this about yourself. So I grew up with a father who was a Christian and a mother who was a Christian. But I strayed and I did my own thing for a while. And so sometimes it's hard for me to see all of that stuff that they did with me had an impact, because if you looked at me, 5 years out of college, you'd have been like, oh, that was a failure. You know what I mean? They clearly, this is just random. I mean, he grew up in the church and now he's, doing lines of cocaine. And it's like, well, okay. But I can understand why you might say that. But my parents believe this same thing about me. They believe that if they taught me what to do, that when I was older, I wouldn't stray from it. And I did stray from it, but God brought me back. And I don't know. I just think that we should, when with our kids, we should have we kind of have to have faith, because we don't have a clue what we're doing. We don't have a freaking clue what we're doing. You know what I mean? And it's like, we either have faith or not. I mean, God has promises for our kids or not, and it's not an arbitrary promise. It's not like maybe I will, maybe I won't. We can't believe it like that.
Yeah.
It's not a formula, but at the same time, it's more than 50-50. Let's just be honest about that.
What is more than 50-50 in a formula?
The promises for our kids. And so I've said this many times to my brother, like we used to argue about this before, and it's like, it's not a formula. So like, if I teach my kids about the Lord, I teach them the way that they go. Is it automatically they're going to be believers? Like, it's like a formula. Like, no, it's not a formula, but it's also not arbitrary. It's not, God's not flipping a coin and saying, okay, well, okay, that one's a believer.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I totally agree with you on that. And so let me ask you this, and this might be difficult for you to answer. I don't know if it is, but I promise you, I'm not going to be mad or upset if you answer the way I think you're going to answer. Yes, take a drink of whatever's in that glass of yours. Bottoms up. So we admit, or we both agree, Baptist Presbyterian, that there's a clear advantage, distinction, however you want to say it, between the lesbian couple, secular dad, and the Christian family.
Yes.
Is there a distinction between the Baptist family that believes the same and the Presbyterian family that believes the same? That is there a difference in simply the ritual or whatever what do you call it? A sacrament? Do you call baptism sacrament, right? Yeah. Okay. So is that baptismal sacrament add to blessings, distinguish blessings? If both parents believe the same thing, because you and me we're tracking on everything right now at Baptist Presbyterian. Does your kids have extra blessings or extra status than mine?
Great question. So I want to be sensitive about this because
I want you to be ruthless.
No, I won't. So I've got people that have asked me this exact question, and they do it with emotion and fear and trembling and stuff. And I've got people that have come to me and said, look, I believe in infant baptism, but I'm in this church that doesn't, and I want to stay in this church. And like,
wow,
what do I do? You know what I mean?
Okay.
And are my kids covered? You know what I mean? If I don't get them baptized instantly. And I always tell them to talk to someone more qualified in their personal situation than me. First of all, that's the first
you pansy. Just say it.
What I say is, no. I think your kids are covered, and I think it's like it's a serious issue, but it's not like God's like, okay, well, you didn't do the proper ritual, so your kids don't get covered in the same way that I promised every one of my followers' kids to do, every one of my people's kids. Like, God's not bound to means. So like, if we don't do the proper means, like he still can cover us with his promises. We better hope so, because let's just be honest. None of us are perfect with what we ought to do. When it comes to means.
We're all transgressors of the whole law.
Right. So we better hope that that's the case. And there's a great quote from Calvin that I cannot quote off the top of my head that talks about this exact thing. So, and Calvin was a big time infant Baptist guy. So like, let's just get that straight. So, anyway,
I didn't know that.
So I would say there are advantages for me to tell my kids that they're Christians. They have the mark. They have the seal of the covenant. God claimed them in baptism, and I treat you like you're Christ because you have the signs and all that. I think there are advantages for me to be able to tell my kids that.
Okay.
Are there cosmic advantages from a spiritual perspective? I'm not sure about that. And I would say probably no, in the sense of like, from God's perspective, your kids, your son, Matt, is still your son. It's still one of his, because you're one of his, and that's your son. And that's how his economy works. So maybe if you didn't do the proper ritual, from my perspective, from God's perspective, he doesn't need the ritual to know who's who.
Okay, so
you understand what I'm saying?
I totally do, and I love that answer. That was so great. But I have one more question to this then, because I feel like our terms just changed. That is, I'm using a term differently than you are.
Okay.
Because we both believe in eternal security. Once you're a Christian, once you're saved, you're always saved, right?
Okay.
Right? Do you believe that? I believe that. Okay.
Totally. Yeah.
So when you say Christian, you're using a different definition of Christian than I am.
Yes.
So can you just elaborate more on what do you mean when you call your son a Christian versus what we call, let's just say, elect?
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to say distinguished?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a very controversial thing. So what I would say when I just used that word Christian, all I meant was that he has the sign of Christ. He's in the covenant in the sense of, like I'm an American because I was born in America. I'm an American citizen.
Okay, can I stop you there for a second then?
My son, yes.
Okay, so you're saying basically you're just giving a name to what we just said, the difference between a Christian family that has blessings associated with living a godly life,
yes,
versus the lesbian or secular father who has porn and all that stuff. You're just giving a title to what we both agreed on as a Baptist and a Presbyterian.
So I want to say yes, but it's a little bit more than a title because God.
Okay, let's work with this.
God does mark people out. So in other words, when God says not all of Israel are of Israel in the Bible, there is still an Israel there. So his people that are covenant breakers are still his, sort of, in a way, but they're not they're not like in the eternal. They're not in the end times. They're not Israel. So it's a little bit more complicated than that. But yeah, that when I just use the word like that, that's how I was using it. I was using it in kind of like a colloquial, like, how do you know the difference between a Christian or a non-Christian? Well, they're baptized. But if you're talking about the end times, when like the truly faithful are revealed, there's going to be less Christians than there were when, kind of like how we. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm tracking with you. So you're saying they're acting like a Christian. They're acting under covenant, basically. They're getting baptized. They're going to church. They're
marked
God.
out.
They're part of the Christian family. Right. Correct. Okay. So I think you kind of switched on me, though, because we were talking a theme about family leadership and how we act as parents to children.
Sure.
And then you went to, well, not all of Israel is of Israel. There's certain elect to the children. So I missed that jump of.
Sure.
I hope this isn't boring to you. This is really fascinating to me because I haven't ever got into this with a Presbyterian before.
Right. Well, we're almost out of time, but what I'll say is basically
time.
Have you heard of the difference between the invisible church and the visible church?
I believe so. And basically, real high level, there's the visible church that goes to church. Sure. But then there's the actual church that are the elect saved.
Right. So you would agree that there are people that go to church and worship God with the church and pray the prayers and all that stuff. But on the inside, they haven't been changed. They don't really care about Christ. Like, you would admit there are some people like that, right?
I'd probably say a majority.
So I wouldn't say yes, a lot of people would say it's a majority. I don't think it's a majority, but I think there are definitely some. Mm-hmm. And what I would say is that those people are who I would call Christians, but not necessarily saved. There are some like that. However, I don't really know who those are a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. And so I try to accept people's profession of faith. I try to say, well, if you have the marks of a Christian, I'm going to treat you like a Christian. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do with my sons. I say, look, you have the marks. They're just kids. They don't really know much, but they have the marks of a Christian. They have not apostatized. I mean, they're only 4 years old, 2 years old, and 1 year old. So they clearly haven't committed apostasy. So I treat them as if they're Christians. I treat them as if they're the Lord's. And so they're in the visible church. Do I know for a fact that they're in the invisible church? No, but I have faith that they are, and I treat them as if they are. There's no reason for me not to. It's confusing either way. And let me say something. Let me just say one thing. The federal vision tries to uncomplicate this, and it doesn't. In my opinion, it doesn't. But this is one of the reasons the federal vision got off the ground in the first place, because of this exact issue. Wow. They thought this was too complicated, and they wanted to simplify it. In my opinion, they did not simplify it at all, but that was one of the missions.
That's interesting because honestly, like, this conversation right now has clarified so many things for me and made it less, confusing. So to me, it kind of seems like you're taking, and you Presbyterians or whatever, Reformed Presbyterians, the same approach that Catholics take, in a sense, is like, oh, I'm Catholic. I was baptized into the church. Was just, my family put me there, so I'm there. I'm a Catholic. And that's kind of how you use the term Christian.
Yeah, some people don't use it that way, but that's how I use it. Yeah.
But okay. So, and then you're putting your children just like Catholics do. Basically, you're baptizing them into the church, but not the Catholic Church, into the Christian church. And it's up to them to leave.
Yeah, sort of. There's definitely nuances there, but at the basic level, like we just assume our kids are in the covenant. Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
And it's not that we're assuming they're regenerate, but we're assuming that God has claimed them for some reason. They're in God's covenant.
Mm-hmm.
And we treat them as such.
Because so a Presbyterian believes they are in, although they could be wrong.
So and this is and this is interesting too, because like every Christian father, and I'm assuming you're the same, that when your son is ready, I don't know how old your son is, but when he's ready, you're going to teach him how to pray, right? You're going to teach him how to pray to God, and you're going to teach him that God hears his prayers. And I teach my son the same thing. Mm-hmm. You would not teach a Muslim to pray to God and say, God hears your prayer, Mr. Muslim, who rejects his son and hates his son and all that kind of stuff. You would never do that. You would never teach a witch or a servant of Baal or a Buddhist to pray and say, well, God hears your prayer. When you pray to God, as you conceive him in your mind, Buddha, like he's going to hear you. You would never say that to a pagan, but you would say that to a Christian. And so it's like, so you kind of assume your son's a Christian as well, because God hears his prayers. You teach him that.
Well, okay. So that, okay. Well, I would say to a Muslim, like, you need to pray to God, but not like in the sense,
not the God you believe in.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't say like, yeah, you're cool. And, just ask for your day to be blessed. I'd be like, you need to pray to God that he reveals the truth to you.
You need to pray to Jesus because he's actually God.
Mm-hmm. And I find that I'm honestly having prayers like that to my son.
That's right.
And this is my first son. My wife's pregnant with our third, had a miscarriage. But like I find myself desperate, like understanding I have no say in this at all, that I just I'm almost interceding with my son next to me, teaching him to pray and things like that. So really the difference is you think, or you're having a perspective, I should say, that he's there and you could be wrong. I have a perspective that I hope he gets there someday. Would that be a fair way to distinguish this? Because we both think that there's blessings from being in a Christian family, leading him, that God is going to honor that. It's just, what's the status, or how are we viewing his status currently? But the actions should be the same regardless.
I think I could agree with that. Because I would say that there's probably very little difference in how I train my son than how a typical Baptist trains his son. But between the two of us, I would say that I'm acting more consistently because I believe my son is a Christian. Like God hears his prayer because he's one of his people. Mm-hmm. And a typical Baptist doesn't believe that his son is one of his people until he gets baptized, makes a profession of faith and all of that. And I wouldn't, and I'm not saying every Baptist believes this, I'm just saying a lot of Baptists do. Mm-hmm. And I would say, well, that's kind of weird. It's a little inconsistent to teach your son to pray like a Christian if he's not a Christian yet. But I understand that that's not, and not everyone agrees with that, but that's fine. This is actually something we should probably eventually come back to, because this is a big difference between Reformed and non-Reformed.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's do that next week on Thursday, 8:30 p.m. when we are changing the time, because I have no idea where you're going with that. And that'll be really interesting, but let's just close it off with this, that you said that we aren't all perfect and there's not a substantial difference between the two. So we found common ground. It was my goal. We did it.
I didn't mean to say that. But anyway, that's fine. Epstein didn't kill himself. We can agree with that.
And Christianity Today is still actually producing things and publishing things.
Well, thanks for the time, man. This was fun.
This was great. We didn't even get to like half of what I wanted to talk about today, but this was a really, really good show. And
we should bring Steve Wedgeworth on here. He knows a lot more about this kind of stuff than I do.
Steven, okay. Let's do it. All right. I'll reach out to him, and then you need to like retweet it and actually participate in this, because you probably know him and I don't. He
reprimanded me once severely.
Yes, I'm going to do it again. You promote other people's channels more than ours.
That's a good point. I need to do. Yeah, good point.
And then maybe we'll talk to this Orthodox Presbyterian and see if he wants to come on too.
I hope so. I don't know. I might have burned that bridge, but we'll see.
Yeah. I'm the bridge builder. You're the bridge burner. I'm the bridge builder. We'll see what we can do. Please follow us on all the social media sites, Reformgelical. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that notification button when you see us. We come out every Friday to the public. If you want to be part of the recordings, we are now on Thursday nights, 8:30 p.m. Go to patreon.com/reformgelical. Thank you for joining. Big Nick, you are always a fantastic audience member. Saying good night to the rest of you. Have a great evening. God bless.
Adios.